We're back with Cancer and Peace. I'm your host, Sean Stewart, or Facilitator. Sorry, I have it backwards. I can't even say it right. Boot doo doo. I'm your Facilitator with our host, Peter Scalzo, and my name is Sean Stewart. I'm here to facilitate a great conversation with the legend of
Everyone's laughing at that one.
Yeah, I know. You are a legend. Even if it's in
my own mind.
Your own mind, you are still a legend. So now we want to talk about something, and it maybe fits in. That's kind of the opposite of what we're talking about, and that is what it means to get to the end of yourself. Because there's something about pain, suffering, and great hardship that boils things down to what's really important. And so today's topic is a bit about, I think we're going to call it From Ashes, is you think about what can you build out of ashes. And I don't know of anything. I like to build stuff. I don't know of anything that gets built out of ashes. I suppose they can be used in the garden or something like that as fertilizer, but most things that are fertilizer seem like they're really low value or they smell or something. But I think this really talks about something that's important in the cancer journey. We find it important in so many parts of the recovery journey. And so I was going to come back to you and say, hey, Peter, your cancer journey has a lot of getting to the end of yourself experiences in it. And maybe you would share one of those with everybody, the listeners and the watchers today, and we can talk about why and what comes from this process of getting to the end of yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. It's an interesting topic for sure. I think that as I look back at the last 17/18 years, and it started in 2005 after a year of not feeling well and having blood in my urine, and then finally getting a diagnosis of bladder cancer with 5 tumors in my bladder, and then having my bladder removed with the prostate parts of the ureter down at Memorial Sloan Kettering in a long surgery, and then having those parts, the bladder and the ureters, replaced with intestinal tissue. This sort of, was a big major surgery for me. I think before that space, before the time of hearing that you have cancer, and then even before the time of you have high-grade cancer, and this could potentially take your life. If it's outside the bladder area, you won't live long. But this is how I think about it logically. So I think we all have worldviews, and you call it narrative, I think. It would be the narrative. But to me, it's like, well, what comprises a worldview? And there's, what makes something right? What makes it wrong? Where does a human being come from? And what happens after death? Sort of all these questions that are asked as to what is the makeup of somebody's worldview. And I think for me, getting a cancer diagnosis back then at the age of 43 was something that shook my worldview. Like what do I really think? And I had sort of this Christian worldview, and that's because I was traveling in those circles. I was a Christian, still am, but and so certain aspects of that worldview were shaken and challenged. But I think that I would rally. It would take me a long time to recover from major surgeries. I'd get back to work, have another issue, have to go in for surgery, blah, blah, blah. So that pattern of sort of getting a cancer diagnosis, surgery, going back to normal life, so to speak, happened for about 10 years. And then I was faced with my 14 surgery, which I've talked about a lot on these podcasts. And in my 14 surgery, the difference was that the cancer was much worse. And it was all throughout the area and outside of the region, which they would call metastatic high-grade bladder cancer. And in those days, it had a 5% survival rate. And I remember, first of all, not expecting that news at all. But after a 10-hour surgery with 3 surgeons and being in ICU, And I remember my head surgeon, who's very honest and direct. I'll be seeing him next month. He's going to do a surgical procedure on me. And he came into my room, sat next to me, and said, "This is much worse than what we thought." And he said, "You're going to need a high-powered chemo." Because I know there's no such thing as margins with this. We couldn't leave. We had to just extract cancer where we could. It was wrapped around your aorta. It was all throughout the ureters. It was all in that area and outside of it. So he said, "You're going to need a high-powered chemo." But my kidneys had also been damaged because of the tumor. So I wasn't going to be able to receive the high-powered chemo. I think he knew that in the back of his head, but later on, 3 major cancer centers said, no, we can't give you the high-powered chemo because it would have destroyed any kidney function that I had left. But anyway, in that place, in the hospital, in ICU, my situation personally was that, first of all, I had a huge incision, abdominally, vertically down, with tubes coming out. They have to do drainage, everything, tubes coming out, NG tubes everywhere, Foley catheter, or just tubes everywhere. And I knew that when I looked down at my body, it's like this thing's crushed. This thing, I don't know if it's going to come back from this. And the implication was, you're not, you're going to go into an end of life eventually, but it'll probably happen sooner rather than later. So my physical body offered me no hope. It was a failed system. And I also thought about the fact that in every area of my life, because I did this quick analysis, I'm not going to be able to practice law anymore. I'm not going to be a moneymaker for my family. I'm not going to be able to provide. My marriage was already struggling, which I knew. That relationship did end in divorce years later, but it was at a point of deep struggle. My kids, they were not old yet. They were still doing their life struggles and that sort of thing. So I kind of went into the father, husband, performer categories and said, and also life ending, and said, okay, that's it. I am in a place of nothingness. I am in a place of complete emptiness. I have nothing to offer. And it looks like my life is over. So that was the place of ashes for me.
It seems like an impossible place to find peace from.
Yeah.
At least from a human perspective, how could there ever be peace there?
Right.
Feels like the question to ask. It's like if we think about all the categories that you laid out, where we see ourselves getting value, understanding, the purpose of life, because purpose is big when it comes to our lives and why are we here? What is this all about? And what does it mean to my future or who I am? Those things have been taken away. You were stripped of all of that. How can there be any peace there?
Right. And I think just to add, my church community at the time had been praying and giving me words of affirmation, such as, oh, it's going to be fine. It'll be like the others. It'll be a surgery, remove the little bits of cancer, and you'll be back at work again, back at life.
False hope?
Yes. Those words were empty promises for me at that point. Did
you see those as empty promises from God or from man?
Yeah, no, I felt, both. Yeah. I was distraught.
You talked in the previous episode about being in a place where you got to there and something happened there. So, yeah. Because none of those are characteristics that most of us find peace. But I will say, seems like as I think about recovery journeys, let's think about how a car operates when a warning light comes on the dash. what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And, this idea of pain is there for a reason. Like we've been designed as humans to have pain for a reason. And pain tells us that we need to go look. We need to go examine. We need to find out there's a problem.
Mm.
And so what I hear in this moment is deep pain.
Mm.
When the warning light goes off in the dash of the car, it doesn't mean keep driving at the same speed and ignore. What is that light about? What does it mean there's a problem? Mm-hmm. Usually that something's been in design says there's a problem. But for humans, it's pain is that warning light on our dash. And it could be physical pain. So somebody who feels physical pain and ignores it, especially in a cancer journey, may find out that they've ignored something that if it had been looked at sooner, if it hasn't been ignored, there might have been more potential for physical recovery at times.
Yeah.
And when we think about emotional and spiritual pain, hopelessness, or this is a place of pain, how does that resonate with you that it's a doorway as opposed to an ending?
Yeah, it really resonates, but didn't at that time. I mean, I think I would describe it as a place of deep hurt. And the hurt was, you have completely abandoned and disappointed me with God. You were supposed to give me a platform. I was supposed to take care of my kids, my family, and everything is failure all around me. And this is I'm in a place of deep hurt. You've walked away. And so it was, that place of deep hurt led to depression and despair, despondency, hopelessness. I figured if here I am, it's just going to continue. It's going to be compounded, this feeling of hurt. And it's just, I'm going to do an end of life process and this is how I'm going to pass. And I didn't have any answers within myself.
You had
nothing.
You had ashes. You were down to ashes.
Had
everything been burned down.
When I looked at the scripture on my tray table, I pushed it away. My son had stayed with me playing hymns and reading scriptures, and I love my son, but I couldn't do it. Could not participate in it.
So there's a mystery that's getting ready to come. How do you move from ashes to this being a doorway? That's the curiosity. I'm sure everybody has the same question as when I hit ashes. Yes. And we had conversations, pre-recording conversation here, and it was something along the lines of this, is that maybe there's degrees of suffering. And I don't think that's a maybe. I think there are degrees of suffering. And I always wrestle with this concept because we've had conversations about, when someone gets to what draws someone into this, I'll call it journey of peace. I call it inner journey a lot. You'll hear this journey of the inner journey, which is deep discovery of something greater than ourselves and true hope and joy. And peace is a part of that. And what draws somebody in, and usually it is great trauma, great loss, and I call it hitting the bottom. When you hit your bottom, in recovery terms, when somebody hits their bottom, one of two things can happen. Either they see and feel and know that bottom, and it begins them on a journey that changes and transforms their lives, or that bottom is the end.
I mean, there were no coping mechanisms for me. Like I couldn't grab a bottle of booze or take a drug or that kind of thing. I mean, I could for pain. Narcotic pain meds did not agree with me, so I would just get sick from them. So there were no ways to numb those emotions. And I remember feeling the weight of hopelessness and and the bottomness of the whole thing. And
Can I stop you right there? Because that's such an important thing you just said. And I want to just, you said you remember feeling the weight of hopelessness. One of the reasons why recovery doesn't work for some people is they never allow themselves to feel the weight of the pain. They rather than feeling the pain, we numb. That's what we do. We numb. And even without drugs or alcohol, there are ways to numb and not lean into the pain. And so the first step I'm hearing you say is you felt the weight and you leaned into the pain. I don't mean to stop the story from I want to hear this. I'm just like that, just highlighting that as this is such an important point to me. If you want to find healing, follow the pain. Keep going.
And I knew that I had to do the work of recovery physically, but I didn't want to. It required me to work hard, and I had nothing in me that wanted to do it. So inside of me, when I looked inside, I saw emptiness and bankruptcy. I didn't see this wealth of like tools. And I did not know what to do. And I remember the weeping, the emptiness of how that feels, to not know what to do. It's a horrible feeling. And our buddy had texted me and he said, how's it going? I said, it's dark and getting darker. I really sense this thick darkness around me, spiritually too, but emotionally. And he came down with an empty journal. I told the hospital no guests because I couldn't face anyone. I didn't know how to process this kind of grief and loss and trauma with anyone. And he came down and he put that on my tray table. And put it on my chest, whichever. And anyway, I put it on the tray table. And then after like 4 days, because I'd look over at it once in a while, but I was in a bleak, dark place. And I picked it up and I just started to write in it. And the pathway for me was, I didn't walk away completely from God, because a lot of the entries were, oh God, are you there?
You opened the door.
Yes. Where are you? Are you there? I can't do this. I said, I remember saying to myself, I can't do this anymore physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I want to die. I had nothing left within me, my 14th surgery. I couldn't do this journey anymore within myself. I was done. I had nothing left. Reserves were gone.
I want to put a concept out there and see if it matches. It's a biblical construct. It's in Revelation. And because I was asking earlier, it's like, is this the end or is this a door? And you opened a door. And in Revelation, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door, I'll come in and dine. And you said, are you there?
Right.
And you picked up the journal to ask that question. And then this journey started.
Yeah.
The moment you opened the door, the journey stopped. But you had to see it as a door, not as punishment, the end. The ashes were the door.
Yeah. I had nowhere else to turn.
And sometimes this is the greatest place of offering to find peace.
And as I began to crack the door and let my raw emotions out, it started to be a little crack of sunshine, like peace and joy. Started to work its way in. And then before I knew it, I felt an embrace. I've talked about that. And then pretty soon I was dwelling in truth. I was writing down scriptures and getting concepts and weeping at the same time, because it was an unbelievable rescue. I can't explain it. It makes me cry anytime when I think about it, but I can't put it in any other words.
I think what you've explained today is enough to help understand that if you're in that place that you're working and you see that things around you look bleak, dark, devastation, you don't even have to get to the point where it's complete ashes. You got to the point where everything was ashes. There was nothing to build upon, zero. But once you get to the end of yourself, it's actually a door. And you can open the door, because opening the door is opening the door to a power greater than yourself, a power of restoration, a power of hope, a power of great peace. And so you defined it well. It was the purpose of the journey is to get to the end of yourself, to find peace, to find the greatest peace of all. And so there's nothing happening here that's a punishment. It's a journey of peace and joy. A heck of a journey. Now I'll ask the harder question, was it worth it?
I feel like I've been entrusted with a rich experience.
Rich and painful.
Yes, that I wouldn't want to duplicate. However, everything about me was reshaped, reformed. And I'm very thankful for the nuggets that I've taken away from this journey. Absolutely thankful. And I don't know how long it's going to last inside this earth skin, but I'm thankful for what I've gone through.
That's a pretty good place to close this episode out. It was it's a heavy conversation. But it's heavy and real. And so I think the takeaway from here, if you want to find deep peace, lean into the pain, get to the end of yourself, open the door. And it probably is going to look a little different for anybody else there. But open that door, and you can open the door now, even if you haven't reached that complete place of ash. You can open the door now and lean into the pain, and there's great healing and hope. So for more resources, go to cancerandpeace.com. Check out Peter's book. There's a whole bunch of talks and interactions out there that are really worth checking out. And there's resources that we use in our own inner journeys that are out there. Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, as an example, is out there. Just check into that. I think you'll find that there's a wealth of joy and peace there. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Sean.